You are connected, and you are listening to Specifically for Seniors, the podcast for those in the Remember When generation. Today's podcast is available everywhere you listen to podcasts and with video at Specifically for Seniors YouTube channel. Now, here's your host, Dr. Larry Barsh.
How do you begin to introduce an award-winning photographer, a musician, a podcaster, a teacher, an author, a tour guide, a traveler, a philosopher, a Canon explorer of light, and an inspiration to those of us still struggling to take the photograph? Easy. You just say, Rick Sammon. Rick, thanks so much for taking time from your busy schedule to come on Specifically for Seniors.
Well, thank you so much. I've never been called a philosopher, but I do have a lot of different philosophies. And it sounds like my mother wrote that intro. So thank you so much.
She did, by the way. She sent it
From
in.
heaven.
I got it at the last minute.
Good. Hey, I hear you have COVID, so I'm sorry to hear that. I had it. My wife had it. Everybody I know has it, and I'm sure everybody I know is going to get it.
Yeah, I've been away from it. I've escaped it until now, but so if I sound a little on the voice, it's because of COVID. Anyhow, I really mean a busy schedule. You just got back from the Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
What were you photographing?
Well, actually, we started out in Tarangire, which is a park in the south. Then we went to Ngorongoro crater. Then we went to the central Serengeti, and then we went to the northern Serengeti. And it's interesting. My wife wanted to go there because we have been to Kenya and Botswana and South Africa, where you could drive off the road. So if you want to get that perfect shot, you can drive off the road and ask the guide to maneuver around and do all this stuff. Well, I thought, okay, we're going to go to Tanzania. You have to stay on the road. Well, the thing is, the animals aren't frightened of the vehicles there, and we got so many amazing, amazing shots from the road. And so we went there to photograph the wildlife, and we were lucky because we saw the one morning we saw 5,000 animals, zebra and wildebeest crossing the Mara River.
Oh,
so it was an amazing, amazing trip that far exceeded my expectations.
And you're off again in a couple of weeks?
Well, we just came after that. We went to Bosque del Apache to photograph the birds. New Mexico. If you have any bird lovers, I know there's a lot of bird lovers in your audience. Bosque del Apache in November and December, they have thousands and thousands and thousands of snow geese and sandhill cranes that fill the sky, especially in the morning. That an event called the Blast Off. So that's really a cool place. That's in New Mexico. And then we're home for a while, and then we're going to just go relaxing in Florida for a week, Delray Beach.
Wakota-Hatchee?
You've been to Wakota-Hatchee?
I lived in Florida for 5 years.
Oh, what made you move?
Long story.
Okay. Well, Wakota-Hatchee, known to locals as Wacko, right?
Yeah.
Wacko for short. But, for bird lovers, Wakota-Hatchee and Green Key are amazing places to photograph birds. I've gotten some of my best pictures there, which proves you don't have to go to Tanzania and the other side of the world to get great pictures.
No, both places were about 15 minutes away from where we lived.
Nice.
So, and I have a lot of friends in the community still down there who are working to perfect their bird photography.
Well, I think birds in flight, as you know, this is like some of the hardest type of photography, right? Because the subject's moving, the background's changing, the exposure's changing. Then we want to think about capturing gesture, wings up or wings down, and we want to get the eye in focus. So there's a lot to think about. But as you know, technology has changed so much. With the eye detection and animal tracking, and 30 frames per second, it's almost like iPhone photography, right? You just point and shoot.
all of the discussions of photography, and this leads into it a little bit, talk about gear and technique.
Yeah.
As important as that is, with all the advancements in cameras,
Mhm.
there's more to a photograph
Yeah.
that only a person can control. Art,
Right.
storytelling, philosophy, passion. How do you feel about those
Well,
aspects?
it's interesting that you asked that. It's really a good question. I was watching, Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Yo-Yo Ma. And I was watching his master class, and he's telling a story, and he's saying that, years ago, he was playing a concert, and he realized he was playing it perfectly. It was so perfect. He said, "I'm playing this perfectly." Then he said to himself, "I'm bored out of my mind." So he felt that at that time he's just playing it perfectly. He wasn't expressing himself. So he's really into expression versus perfection. So you mentioned the gear. So yeah, people want the sharpest lens. They want to take out all the noise. They want to zoom in and take out the pixels or clone out this. The expression is really what it's all about, and it's the exact same thing. With music, you see the guitars in the back. You can play a song perfectly, but if you don't express yourself like Santana or Eric Clapton or any of the great musicians out there, that's what they're interested in doing, expressing themselves. They're not interested. Well, they might be interested in perfection too. I know Paul McCartney. They would record things, many many times. Although he went into the studio and did Blackbird, I think, in one take. So anyway, that's what I think. What I try to stress to people, especially lately, that expression is way more important than perfection.
How did you get interested in photography? You're obviously multi-talented.
Well, many of your audience, many of people in your audience may remember the 1960s TV show Person to Person with Edward R. Murrow. Edward R. Murrow, like the famed journalist in World War II, he came back. He had the first live TV show. Well, my father was the technical director of that show, and he would go to with his Linhof 4x5 view camera, go to Marilyn Monroe's house, Joe DiMaggio's house, Humphrey Bogart's house, and he would photograph the houses before the show, and then we bring the negatives back, develop them in our basement, and then bring them to work, and so they could see where to put the lights and the mics and all this stuff, and how they were going to set up the cameras, whatever. So at an early age, like 10, my father's developing it and showed me how to do it, pictures in the basement, and my mother's hand coloring them with pencils. It's amazing.
So that's how you got started.
Well, that's how I was interested in it. And, I just think photography it's always been fun. And, Groucho Marx had a saying. He said, if you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. And, before we came on, you say, how do you do all this stuff? I really, the fun aspect is really important in my life. So, we went to Tanzania to take pictures, but I told everybody my main goal was to have fun with Susan. And that's what we did.
For those listeners who travel and like to
Mhm.
include people in their
Right.
photography, how do you recommend they interact with people of different cultures, different languages?
hmm Well, it depends. I tell people that my specialty is not specializing because I do like to do it all. But when it comes down to it, I really do like photographing people. So if I go to a place like Bhutan or Nepal, or actually I did the same thing in Tanzania, I bring magic tricks and I do magic tricks first. So I get the people to like me or at least accept me into their lives by doing the magic tricks. And then I ask them, oh, could I take a picture here? Could I take a picture there? But in street photography, I just go up to people. I say, with a big smile, could you do me a favor? Could I take a picture? I'd love to send you the picture.
Yeah, street photography is one of my favorites, and
hmm
I love taking pictures of people. I
Yeah,
love interacting where I don't have the language.
right.
A smile and a wave and works wonders.
Well, there's an expression that comes from Freeman Patterson in Canada, and his expression is that the camera looks both ways. In picturing the subject, we're also picturing a part of ourselves. And this is true. So if I want to photograph, someone in Cuba, and and I want a big smile, I'll go, hey, can I take your picture? You know, I'm smiling, things like that. But if I'm photographing a Buddhist monk in Cambodia, I'm going to show a lot of respect. So I'm going to act differently. So an easier way to say that is that we're mirrors.
I'd like to talk a bit about planning for a trip, too.
Sure.
Most of the listeners here, naturally, are older adults. I like to say we're all in the remember when generations.
Well,
Remember?
I like to say sexy senior citizens.
Yeah, oh, thank you. No.
Well, you know, on that note, I was given a presentation at a retirement center actually in Florida, not too far from Delray. And I said, it's great. I said to one of the ladies there, I said, "No, thank you for coming. It's great to see you." She said, we rather, she said, we rather be seen than viewed. It's a good one, right?
Yeah, that's good. Uh, Most of the trips, and I say this from experience as well, most of the trips we take are escorted at this point in our lives. We're on a tour. We're so carrying a number of cameras, lenses, tripods becomes impossible because of the weight and the other people on the
Hmm.
tour. And other people on the tour want to go shopping.
Yeah,
They're not particularly tolerant of
right,
those of us who want to take our time to kind of.
right.
I mean, I was at Angkor Wat with
Yeah.
my wife, and we got to walk through for a couple of hours, and people are saying, "When are we going to go to lunch?"
Right, I know.
What cameras do you take? How do you get pictures of value in this type of situation?
Yeah, well, lately we've been trying to go by ourselves. Or we do, if I would recommend going on a photo tour rather than a photo workshop. Photo workshops, you're going to work. You're going to be, you know, doing a lot of processing, doing this and that. So photo tours are different where the photographer is just going to show you around. So I think photo tours are a great way to do this. And they're usually cheaper, also more affordable than photo workshops. So a photo tour, I think, is a good way to go. But I know people who bring camera bags with every lens known to man packed in there. They like bring 8 lenses. I bring my iPhone and I bring a 24 to 105 if I'm doing street photography, and that might be it. Wildlife photography, I'll bring a 100 to 400 or 500 and a 24 to 105.
So you do a lot of travel photography with the iPhone as well?
The iPhone's amazing. Susan Sammon, my wife, got into this because we've been married for 48 years next year. Uh, she's been shooting seriously, I think, for maybe about 5 or 8 years, maybe longer. And I always said that through osmosis, she learned all this stuff from me. Now I'm learning so much stuff from her with the apps and stuff like that. And you know what? I think one of the most important things I learned from her is to shoot wide. I'm like big on cropping. I have OCD, obsessive cropping disorder, and she gets amazing wide angle shots. So that's one of the things I learned from her. Also learned about all these apps. The Distressed FX, Snapseed, all these amazing apps. There's so much you could do with the iPhone or the smartphone.
That's interesting you say that as a professional photographer.
Well, look at the megapixels, right? That these and the new iPhone with the 3 lenses in it. This is amazing. Actually, I have a friend who's surprised. She sees me taking pictures with the iPhone, and I just sent her a link to. Uh, I don't know if you know Russell Brown. He works at Adobe. Great photographer, Dr. Russell Brown. What he did in the last year with the iPhone was incredible.
I'll have to look that up.
Russell, he's on Facebook, Dr. Russell Brown.
Some specifics. Do you
Yeah.
have one photograph you're especially proud of?
Okay. I'm asked that question so many times,
Yeah, I've got to be.
but the answer is the first one that comes to mind is a picture I took of my father. It was the last picture I took of him. He was in his den. He was 92 years old. He was looking out the window. And I thought, he was fading. He was on a walker in his robe. And I thought, should I ask him if I could take his picture? Uh, and I finally did. And he might have known why I was taking the last picture, because might be the last picture. So anyway, it captured him so beautifully with side light looking out the window. He was so happy. And so that would be my favorite picture.
You mentioned that you were sort of a general photographer, liking to take pictures of everything.
Right.
Is there one aspect you enjoy the most?
Well, I like the people photography, but I also love the processing. The processing is just like amazing. This is not an original thought. It's Ansel Adams' thought. He said that the negative is the score. Like I play piano and guitar, and then the performance is the processing. So I could look at sheet music. Look at the sheet music. It's nice, but you start to play it. It's amazing. It comes to life. So the processing, and there's so much we can do. You remember shooting slide film, right?
Yep.
If you didn't get it right, I used to do underwater photography, and if we got one shot per roll, because we would bracket like crazy, we were happy. So today it's just so easy.
I remember yelling upstairs from the darkroom, nobody flushed the toilet. I've got temperature control issues down here.
Really? Wow, was that?
Yeah, I couldn't go for big heaters and temperature control at the time.
Right.
But you're talking more about digital photography, digital
Yeah.
processing now?
Yeah, the digital processing is what we can pull out, with from the shadows and tone down the highlights and apply all these, replace the sky. And I say, some people, if you're working for National Geographic, you're not going to replace the sky. But if you want to have fun and think like an artist and think like a painter, it's okay to replace the sky as long as you tell someone you did it.
So is your philosophy that photography is more art than rendition of a scene?
Well, I don't know if I would say that. Well, it is definitely art, but along those lines, my friend, there's an expression that says every photograph is a lie, meaning that what you choose to include in a scene isn't always what the scene's like. So if I was like really close to the camera and I didn't have and you couldn't see the guitars in the back, I could say, I'm coming to you from a hotel room in Mongolia. You right? I mean, you wouldn't know. You would know that I'm in my studio. So we create our own reality, I think, with our photographs by what we choose to take out or include in a scene. Painting is additive. A painter looks at the canvas and decides what they want on the canvas. As photographers, we look at a scene and we say, what don't we want in the scene, right?
So moving a branch, taking out a discarded soda can, you're really altering what was there.
Well, you are. And, a National Geographic photographer might not do that, but my guess, a lot of these pictures are posed. I see pictures that I'm sure are set up, and there's nothing wrong with that. Matthew. Now, this discussion actually went back to the Civil War. Matthew Brady, uh, one of maybe the most famous photojournalists of the Civil War, had these amazing pictures of the soldiers with the gun here and the cannon in the back. And it turns out he set them all up. He would drag a body and things like that. So that's not photojournalism. What I do is certainly not photojournalism. What I do is fun.
What are the most important parts of a portrait, speaking of people photography?
Well, getting back to the Greeks, Joseph Korsavadua claimed that he came up with this saying. And by the way, if your listeners want to look up a wonderful photographer, Korsavadua, who my father actually had on Person to Person, there's the saying is the eyes are the window to the soul. So I'm looking, to get the expression in the eyes first, and to usually light the eyes. But I'm also looking for gesture. Right, gesture is so important. That's why when I'm moving around with my hands, that's gesture. So gesture in bird photography, animal, people, whatever. Gesture is so important. But I think you want to try to capture the person's personality. You know, uh, Getting back to Karsh, one of his famous pictures was of Winston Churchill, and Winston Churchill is like scouring at the camera, and it really captured his personality. And here's how Kosh got it. Of course, Churchill was known for always having a cigar in his hand. So Winston Churchill said, "I want to catch him off guard. I want to capture, see how he would react, if something unexpected." So he has a remote trigger, for his camera. So he goes up to Churchill and he takes away his cigar. If your listeners and viewers look up Winston Churchill, Karsh of Vaudeville, they'll see how Winston Churchill's scouring right in the camera like that. It's very intense.
Okay, away from photography for a minute.
Yep.
You are an accomplished musician as well.
Yep.
And you provide guitar lessons on the internet at your website. Yep. Is that part of being an artist? Do the two activities combine?
Well, we mentioned Ansel Adams a few times. He was a concert pianist.
Was he?
He was amazing. Scott Kelby, Kelby won. Probably actually sells. He's the top-selling Photoshop book author in the world. Maybe Photoshop and photography or computers. He's amazing on guitar and piano and drums. At Photoshop World, I play with him. So many of my photographer friends, I could go. Tony Sweet, great photographer, plays drums. Joe Brady, guitarographer, plays bass. Mark Heaps from Adobe, or not Adobe, at Live Pixel, he plays beautiful guitar. So, people who are good at one thing are usually good at a lot of things.
Interesting. And speaking of good at a lot of things, let's talk about your passion for teaching.
Yeah.
You guide tours,
mm-hmm.
present seminars. You've written more than 40 books on almost every aspect of photography and the business of photography, how to make money while you're sleeping.
That's my latest book and my most popular book.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
You know what? I got the idea. I was on Twitter and I saw a quote from Warren Buffett. And he says, if you don't learn how to make money when you're sleeping, you're going to work until you're dead. So I said, hey, that probably applies to photography. He's talking about passive income. So in that book, How to Make Money While You're Sleeping, which is available on Amazon, I talk about all the different ways photographers, or actually artists, can make money while they're sleeping.
Where does that aspect of your life come from, the teaching aspect?
Well, I started out teaching guitar and piano, and I really like it. And I don't know how I evolved into this. They say the expression is people who can't do teach. Well, look at Yo-Yo Ma, right? Yo-Yo Ma's teaching, right? Martin Scorsese's teaching. Annie Leibovitz is teaching. So I think there's also, good money in teaching, to be honest, right? I mean, people want to learn.
I taught at a dental school for a while. I'm a dentist originally. And
I wanted to ask you. I have a
pen
right here.
Take your best shot. Go ahead. Why do I always bring that up? But I wrote a textbook on how to plan treatment in dentistry and used some of Ansel Adams' concepts on pre-visualization.
Really?
Yeah, it was an interesting experiment.
Is that available?
Not anymore. This was 1980-ish.
Wow.
So one question that has little to do with photography. You've traveled around and you've returned to places. Has there been a change due to climate change?
Well, absolutely. Uh, if your viewers want to see something, go on YouTube, type in Rick Salmon in a t-shirt in Antarctica. That's changed. Susan and I, we scuba dived. All we did was scuba dive and take underwater pictures for 20 years. We can't go back or don't want to go back to some of the places like the Great Barrier Reef, which are not in good shape, the Maldives, Key Largo, closer to home, the reefs around the world. My son, if he goes scuba diving, is not definitely not going to see what we saw. And the weather patterns are changing all over the planet. We were in Tanzania at quote the wrong time because our trip was delayed, and the animals were still there because they didn't have to move to follow the rain. So climate change is affecting everything, and you don't have to go to Tanzania or Antarctica or the Arctic or Greenland where the ice is melting faster than anywhere else on the planet. Just go look out in your own backyard and see how the climate is changing.
I snorkeled over the Great Barrier Reef, just
Yeah,
tourist
amazing,
thing.
right?
There are no fish. Every,
Recently you
no, it was a couple of years ago, and
no,
it was
that's
just,
recently.
yeah,
No fish on the Great Barrier
yeah,
Reef. That's so sad.
yeah. Okay, one more thing.
Sure.
Uh, you just wrote a book that has no images, a
Hmm.
photo book that has no images.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's called. I have it right here. It's called Phototherapy, Motivation, and Wisdom. It was going to be called Phototherapy, and then my wife said, "Oh, add motivation and wisdom." Yeah, and it has no pictures in it. And what I wanted to do, so this is not the first photography book, by the way, written with no pictures in it, but I thought it'd be a challenge, and it actually became a number one bestseller on Amazon in a relatively short period of time. But I didn't want people to be distracted by a sunset picture or a wildlife picture, and I just wanted them to really think about photography, including, I'm looking for the chapter here on page 7 here. I asked people, what does your photography mean to you? And so this is more of a philosophical book. So, photography is so important to people. Here are some of the things people said: an escape, everything, exploration, play and fun, my social life. Someone said, I have no choice, freedom, owning art. Art heals. How about that? Living legacy, staying fresh. And I'll leave the last, well, there's a lot here, but save my life. So I realized how important photography is to people. And I got that idea also from social media. I saw a book on Twitter called Bird, Ther- Bird Therapy. And that book talks about how important, it is to watch birds, and how you could, you've heard in in nursing homes, they have aquariums, people watch the fish swim around. Well, that's very therapeutic. So anyway, I think photography is so therapeutic, so rewarding, so fun, and helps us grow and stay young.
I know it's been a big part of my life as well.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is right on track.
Yeah. Yeah, I ask people that question sometimes. I just did a workshop. We went around the table, and two people got emotional because it's just so important to them.
And I think the act of taking the photograph, uh, you see more, you learn more, you involve yourself more in the culture of where you are.
Well, that is so true. Like with music, there's a big difference between hearing and listening. And, you could be driving around in the car with your friends, whatever, and the best song in the world could be on, and you could just hear it. But if you're by yourself, you might listen to it. You might listen to the bass, the drums, the vocals, the violins, whatever's there. And in photography, it's the same thing. There's a big difference between looking and seeing. A lot of people, just go to the Grand Canyon and they see it, but a photographer will go there and look. And so I like to use that analogy a lot, that there's a big difference between in music, hearing and listening, and photography, looking and seeing.
Any other books, tours, seminars, or workshops you want to talk about?
No, I have those books are two of my favorites, and I have a Tanzania workshop coming up next year, but it's full. So yeah, everything else is pretty good.
Anything we missed?
No, you did a great job, and I wish I had you as a dentist. When I was younger.
Yeah. Well, it's
You have a good chair, like a doctor has a bedside manner. You have a good chairside manner.
well, that took about 40 years to develop.
Right.
So I'm way away from that now.
Yeah.
Anyhow, Rick, this has been exciting. I thank you for coming on specifically for seniors.
Well, thank you. Being a sexy senior citizen, I hope myself. It's been a pleasure. You did a great job.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, my friend.
If you found this podcast interesting, fun, or helpful, tell your friends and family, and click on the follow or subscribe button. We'll let you know when new episodes are available. You've been listening to Specifically for Seniors. We'll talk more next time. Stay connected.